Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the question of the direction that the Biden campaign is taking. And I'm asking the question, is this a good strategy as President Biden will cast Trump as the threat for democracy as he prepares his speech for the January 6th memorial remembrance? And this is part of his campaign effort. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, there's a new report that says that Black and brown teens say guns make communities less safe, yet they still want one. Yeah, I'm going to share with you the conversation around that and the conversation of two 10-year-old boys who crossed paths and a most tragic fate. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about, does a Black America care about the firing of former president of Harvard, Claudine Gay? We'll have that discussion. And later, moving in America, should our politics influence where we live? We'll talk about that. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is officially Wednesday, January 30th. Happy Wednesday, folks. And I'm so happy that you were able to join us in a few moments. I got my sister from another mother, the great Suzette Speaks, is going to be joining us in quite a moment. There we go. Yep, she's going to be joining us as she kicks off her new year with us. Also, folks, let's talk about where we are streaming at right now. We are checking us out on our homepage first and foremost at blackstarnetwork.com. Go to our website, download the app for free on all your devices. Follow us on social media under Black Star Network. And of course, we ask for your support, your financial support. Any new watchers, any new viewers, we would love to get your support, whether it's $5, $10, $15, $20, $25, $30, $1,000. Anything will happen. Anything is appreciated as we are powering forward in this digital space. So go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, folks, we are streaming live on Amazon platforms, on Amazon News, on your Fire TV. We're also on Amazon Prime Video. Just find us in the Prime Video app. And you can find us in the live TV and news, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, then live TV, then news. Also, we are on Freevee. You can find us there under news, and we're on Flex TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just search for Black Star Network, or find us in the live TV and news and opinion. All right, got the Culture Crew gathering in all types of places. You can check us out and be a part of the Culture Crew on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. We're there. We're also on Roland Martin's Facebook page. So you can check us out there as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's Facebook page. So big shout out to the Facebook crew. And we got the Online Culture Crew on Roland Martin's YouTube page. And folks are checking in and gathering. The ABX girl, Ming Lee, Natasha, Serge, Ming, good to see you, ABX girl. Thank you for connecting with us. Donna McAdoo, Kelly, Donna, thank you for checking in. Big brother Willie Frazier's in the chat. I see my brother Pastor Damon Blessett is in the chat. Who else we got? Miss Pauline Hurt is in the chat. Deidre Hall is in the chat. Conscious Thought is in the chat. There we go. We got some heavy hitters in the chat today. So make sure y'all don't miss an opportunity to join us in those conversations with our fantastic culture crew. All right, let me bring on my sister, who is always rocking and rolling, getting everybody talking. She's the host of the Suzette Speak Show on YouTube. She's also a licensed attorney out of the state of Florida. We're going to talk a little Florida today with Suzette, as always. But welcome, Suzette. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, Friday. We're expecting the blessed 2024 in the name of Jesus. Let's go.
I like that.
I need it. I received it.
I love it. All right, Suzette, let's first talk about this first story, because you are a political strategist as much as you are an attorney and all of the other roles that you play. But you are a part of the Democratic leadership there in Florida. And Florida, of course, is a big state, like some of the other big states. But, Florida's becoming a different state for this president. But his strategy, as we are 3 days out from I don't want to say, because it's not really institutionalized, but there's a remembrance of what happened on January the 6th with this storming of the Capitol. President Biden, of course, speaks on this. He started last year where he would address the country about the perils facing democracy. And again, he's going back to this theme this year. But of course, this is part of his overall campaign effort to lay out, to show that Donald Trump is a problem. He is essentially the threat against democracy. I'm wondering, Suzette, is this a good strategy that the president should use? Because there were some points throughout this whole ordeal that he didn't want to really speak on January 6th. He didn't really want to kind of, we have the committee happening. We have these indictments came down. We have these ongoing legal cases against the former president. So is this a good thing, or do you feel like this is going to help or hinder bringing people together to get them out to the polls and essentially putting this man back into office? And I'm speaking of President Biden back into office.
Yeah, I think it's an important strategy that he's been using as of recent. And again, shout out to everybody in the chat. Hello, Culture Crew, watching from around the world. When we think about what President Biden has done, he has had remarkable term in office. When we talk about unemployment, when we talk about some of the bills he's been able to pass, some of the executive orders he's been able to pass, trying to affect the lives of American people in the most impactful way he can, remembering that Congress controls the legislation that is put forward, of course, but he has seen and he has tried to work on behalf of bipartisan bills that have become law in a very successful way. But for whatever reason, Farajii, a lot of this messaging has not really taken hold. You do not really hear a lot of people saying, yay, thank you, President Biden, although it's been very impactful for the COVID relief bill, for the infrastructure bill, from all these wonderful pieces of legislation that have given money to the states to, again, impact Americans on a day-to-day basis. So I think the campaign is pivoting now, realizing that, again, we're a few days, not even probably as of this broadcast, 12 days from the Iowa caucuses, and looking at just a few weeks from Super Tuesday, that there's a message that is needed to be emphasized, shared, reshared, however you want to put it, that he has been, as you said, I don't know if he's been shy to share it, but he has been more methodical about sharing
right.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
January 6th has come up. He has commemorated it, right? He gave speeches before at the Liberty Bell. And as you said, in 3 days, on this third anniversary of January 6th, he will be giving a speech in Pennsylvania from Valley Forge. And there's a significance to why he chose Valley Forge. If you guys are buffs when it comes to the American Revolution and our fight as Americans for independence against England, this was one of the locations where George Washington, our founding father at the time, he was head of the Continental Army that was going against England, but he and his troops were facing very dire straits and Valley Forge. The weather was like blistering cold. So many things were going wrong, and they still prevailed when it came to beating back British forces and ultimately winning the war. So he has picked this very significant, historically significant location, I think, to talk about the birthplace of democracy, of American democracy, and trying to reignite this realization among many who have become, complacent. The news cycle goes, so fast. But the remembrance this year, I think, especially going into a presidential year, is one that he wanted to have like a very, very, what could I say, impactful yet strategic meaning. So before we kept saying, January 6th, and he didn't want to seem partisan. But the realization is that there are so many Americans that are still misinformed and still ill-informed about what actually happened, that people invaded, swarmed, tried to take over the United States Capitol in the name of trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power, of an election outcome, and try to prevent it from being certified. This is what took place. And a lot of rewriting of history has been taking place, especially from Trump and his allies. And I think it's really important now. And I think as an election tool, President Biden is realizing that if you are not going to really be able to push the messages that he thinks normally people would resonate with in terms of better jobs and the lower joblessness rates, and what he's been able to do with student loan forgiveness, and how he's been able to try to pass against some landmark legislation successfully during his term. It's like almost nobody cares. I think it's super important that we talk about those things, but if he can't get through on the pocketbook issues and the very things that are to me the highlights of his presidency, he's going to try to remind the American people that, listen, if you don't vote for any other reason but to understand that democracy is very fragile, and we have a man who has already said he wants to be a dictator for a day, in jest, but we know that there's a lot more of January 6th coming from the Trump camp
Yeah.
and allies. So I think
Yeah.
it's important that he's taken the time, as he's done each year, to talk about it again. I think he's been trying to focus on doing his job, but for the most part, this is going to be, I think, one of the hallmarks of the Biden campaign.
I think I would agree with you. I definitely would agree with you, Suzette. And I think that once again, America is going to be faced with two major visions, right? The one that President Biden has put out, and using history as a reference. His one of his communications people said, and Lisa, let's put up quote number two, please, talking about the significance as Suzette laid out about being at Valley Forge. If you look down at the second paragraph, Quentin Fulks, deputy campaign manager, he said, there the president will make the case directly that democracy and freedom, two powerful ideas that united the 13 colonies, and that generations throughout our nation's history have fought and died for a stone's throw from where he'll be Saturday, remain central to the fight we're in today. And this is coming from Quentin Fulks, deputy campaign manager. My concern is, how does that message resonate for Black voters? You're talking about the 13 colonies. If you go back to that time, we know where Black people were at that time. So
Some
how
of
do
us
you?
were fighting in the Continental Army.
Some of us were fighting in the Continental Army, and some of us were still in forms of chattel slavery. So how does that message resonate? I'm not going to say it's a whitewashing of history, but just in terms of recognizing that Black folks still, and I mean his most ardent supporters, we weren't in the best condition even then. So how do you think the president should be able to kind of navigate using that part of American history to galvanize Black America?
Well, one of the first people who lost their lives in the American Revolution was Crispus Attucks. We remember
Right,
him.
right.
And for a long time, looking back in history, African Americans really used him as a symbol. Even Martin Luther King talked about Crispus Attucks and the first blood that was shed on this land for this American vision being that of a Black man. It is very significant to those of us who follow news, those of us who follow history. But there's a large swath of Americans as a whole, and of course the Black community in particular, that does not have this kind of, historical appetite, right? Where they're looking at, what does this even mean? Did they learn about Valley Forge like so many of us did in college
Right,
or
right,
high
right.
school or elementary school? I mean, I have friends who went to Valley Forge in high school as a part of trips. So I agree with you that sometimes what on a more lofty, well learned plane, what many who pay attention will find very interesting and significant. A lot of times, and I think this has been a problem with Democrats, the messaging is going over sometimes the heads of the average Joe, no pun intended. So,
Hmm.
or I was gonna say something like the average Jerome, but y'all don't be mad. I love my Black folks. I'm not trying to be, disingenuous with that, but I'm just trying to tell y'all, like, it does not necessarily hit the same. I hear what your point is, that sometimes you're trying to make these big and beautiful and bold remarks at Valley Forge, and it's important for, again, the American people to remember. But he also needs to tap into some of the ways in which we collect and we as Black people find our information, and needs to do a kind of a little bit more intricate job of maybe creating better channels or better ways of connecting why this is important to everyday people's lives. You and I, Farajii, again, we read, we pay attention.
Right.
We understand that if this former president has a chance to get back in office again, he is trying to run out the clock. He wants to wrap up the nomination on the Republican side before any court hearing starts or before any verdict is rendered. He knows what time it is. So if he can prolong and if he can kind of, again, push out the court cases as much as he possibly can, there won't be a reason to remember remember 10 times, but looking at what will come out in those cases, we'll talk about how what his behavior was during and leading up to January 6th impacted those who would seek to overthrow the will of the people, the vote of the people, and that they are continuously looking towards how they can keep themselves in power. And if allowed back, we probably won't see a free and fair election ever again. So I think, again, for Mr. Biden, from his generation, for how he and his team perceive, the importance of being at some place as historical as Valley Forge, I think it's important to do so, but they may be missing a kind of larger swath of the everyday Joe to understand why this is important. We got to, again, the educational piece of the American public has to go on a little bit better, maybe through surrogates, maybe through having conversations on platforms like this one. But yes, it's fine. But I don't know if it's going to hit the way he thinks it's going to hit for Black folks.
I know we got to take a quick pause, but that was one of my thinking. That was what I was thinking, like maybe using surrogates, because I think the message for Black America has to be different when it comes to us, quote unquote, saving democracy, right? That message has to be different to Black folks than it is for the other folks, right? And this is not racism. This is just because of our relationship with the government, our experience coming from chattel slaves to going through Jim Crow and that whole period and all of that stuff. Like, our existence in this country is different. So you might need a surrogate. It may not be the president. It could be Vice President Kamala Harris. It could be someone else who helps to say, okay, now with Black people, we got to talk to them differently to get them engaged, to understand their value. Because you got a lot, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I can assume that there are a lot of different views around what democracy is if you ask Black America. Like, should Black America be truly invested in saving democracy? And I bet you would get about 100 different answers. So at this point, it's like just the Biden administration would just have to kind of switch it up a little bit. They can't expect this man to give a message for all. You won't have to run different plays on it, Suzette. And, it might be you. I don't know.
Well, listen, they need to educate them as to why Black people should be invested in saving democracy. But we got to take a break, Farajii.
We got to take a break. All right. When we come forward, let's talk about something that is really straining democracy, which is gun control and gun reform. I got to talk to you about a new report that shows that Black and brown teens say that, yes, guns make communities unsafe, but they still want one. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to share with you the story of two 10-year-olds who crossed paths in a very tragic and unlikely fate. Folks, we got to stay with us. That conversation about guns is the next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, We're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. I've been chatting it up with my sister from another mother, my sister Suzette Speaks, host of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube, and she is the licensed attorney out of the state of Florida, as we talk a little bit about something that has been pretty much like an Achilles heel for this country for a very long time, which is guns. We've been talking about gun safety, gun control, gun reform for years, but it has gotten to a whole different level. And so much so that it is affecting the growth of young people. There was a study that said that one time, Suzette, that gun violence is the #1 killer of young people in this country. Gun violence, homicides. And that's resonated with me. So when I hear the conversations, when I see information about guns, I'm always interested to see, what's the latest trends? What are some of the things? My city, my hometown of the city of Baltimore, this is the first year that Baltimore had less than 300 murders in nearly a decade.
Wow.
We ended the city ended the year in 2023 with about 272 murders, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll ask my producers, Lisa, to double check. But we ended it took us a long time. Our murder rate was over 300 murders per year. And it took a long time. Now, it's a lot of work that's been put into this whole process, right? You have not just the efforts from the mayor's office or from the police department. One of the things that they have that I saw in Baltimore, and I was working and part of in Baltimore, where there were groups of Black men who would call themselves the We Are Us campaign. And essentially, these are Black men from the mosque, from the Nation of Islam, from the church, from various community organizations. And for the past 3 to 4 years, they have been hitting the ground, direct action type of organizing, direct action contact with our people within those neighborhoods in Baltimore City that are, where gun violence runs rampant. And so when you're looking at situations like this, you know that it's a serious thing, and it's a small change, but it makes a big difference. Now, that's in one area. But according to this recent report that has just been released, Suzette, this was a report that was published by the project group Project Unloaded, which is a gun violence prevention nonprofit. I want to share with y'all what they had to say in this new report about where we stand with guns with Black and brown teens. According to this new report, they say that the goal was to get a more comprehensive perspective from Black and Latino teenagers who live in areas that have high rates of gun violence. According to the study, Black teens are more likely to have experienced gun violence. It states that 43% of the Black participants reported hearing stories from friends and families about gun violence. 30% lost a family member to gun violence, and 28% had a family member who was injured by a gun. The other part of this report, also from the Project Unloaded, it said that as much as these Black and Latino teenagers say that the guns make communities unsafe, they still want one to stay safe.
Yeah,
it's a vicious cycle. And that's what I kept thinking to myself, is that this is a vicious cycle. Like, you want to stay safe, but then if you live in a neighborhood or live in an area where gun violence runs rampant, this is the only option that these young people have to see. What's your take on this?
Yeah, in this article on the Grill, I thought it was really important that we highlight, and I was just trying to look at where they interviewed these young people from, because I think, again, the source of the data in any type of statistical study is important. So through a series of individual and small group online and in-person interviews, and I think that makes a difference, Farajii, because how a young person will answer you in person versus if it's being anonymous online also impacts the data. But nonetheless, they were from neighborhoods in Philadelphia, Chicago, Sacramento, and other urban areas with highest rates of gun violence. So we're looking at a very small subset of teens that are the most impacted by having guns in their communities. So it does make sense to me, if the study is looking at those who gun violence most impacts their lives, that they would have this idea that I don't want to be caught slipping, as the young people say. I need my own protection. I need to not be a victim, because I know they exist and I know that they're heavy in my community. So what do? I can say I can rely on as you pointed out, groups that are peacekeeping or have an impact socially, through community-based policing and community-based work. I can try to rely on law enforcement to protect me. But most of all, these teens that live, again, on the front lines of where gun violence has the most devastating impact are saying to themselves, how can I be sure that I survive if those are my options? Again, community-based policing and law enforcement themselves, or do I have to protect myself? And it's a very sad state of affairs. So looking at who their target demographic was for this study, it's not surprising to me at all.
Absolutely. And I know folks are saying, like, let me see, we got a crew member who checked in, who talked about the legalities of this. Who said this? Well, Sean Ryan, you say guns save millions of people a year from violent situations. Okay, I guess. I don't know the
guy with the gun.
You're right. Frankie said the difference you aren't saying we want legal guns. And how do we have this conversation about gun access and just overall gun safety in this country without at the same time, like, throwing shade on legal gun owners, right? Because when we're talking about gun violence in this country, we're not talking about legal guns, are we? Is this that kind of type of conversation? Because if you are a responsible gun owner, I would assume that your guns are not going to. If you are if you are responsible, it's going to be locked up. It's going to be safe to stored safely and all of those things. I'm talking about these unregistered guns. Or am I? How do we talk about this?
It's a multi-layered kind of issue. So you do have people who, again, majority of our guns sold here in the United States are legal. We have more guns than people. We have 330 million people. I have to look at what the latest statistic is in terms of how many guns we have here in the United States that we know of, right? So we have this large swath of the population that chooses a form of, self-protection, a constitutionally guaranteed form under the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, right to carry arms. So I think the conversation about legal gun ownership and trying to make sure people who don't have, for example, mental illness get guns. I think there is a prong of that legal gun ownership that says, okay, great. Everybody who wants one and it has legally passed the background checks. Again, we don't even have national databases and things like this. So calling it legal is, or the sale of legal guns, I think most people can agree with is a part of, again, our constitutional framework. But then there are so many folks that slip between the cracks who have issues, are again challenged by mental health issues, maybe have a past of violent crime, maybe have other issues where, again, the age limit for how old people can be to own guns, I think that's not settled yet, even though it's legal in some states to be 18 or 21 or whatever it is. So I think there's not a national framework. Everything is now given to the states, state by states. And I think people are arguing that maybe there should be some national regulation. That's when we hear the conversation kind of move to semi-automatic weapons and automatic weapons and things or pieces that affix to guns that allow them to behave as if they're semi-automatic. Again, when you tap in a trigger and, again, 10 bullets come out versus hundreds of bullets coming out and all these kind of things. And were weapons of war meant to be bought and sold for the everyday consumer, right? Or under the Second Amendment, is that something that we would like to see? So we have a lot of various opinions. I think it does. We always want to stay balanced within the conversation. There are so many people, and I think some of the most educated people about gun laws are lawful owners, right? They know what they can and can't do. They know the rules and how it's supposed to be locked up and, where you're supposed to keep it. And you have to take your classes and all these other things and properly get trained, right? But then we have a lot of folks that are not following those rules. So illegally sold guns, I think, is also a big swath of the issues that we're seeing. People steal guns. People, there's no national database, again, no serial numbers, no things that you can always trace. And again, our vendors of guns oftentimes are not keeping one standard. So I think there's a lot of people that say until we get maybe some national legislation and a framework in place so we can, see that, say, red flag laws actually work, right? Where they're supposed to work, et cetera, where left hand is talking to the right hand and everybody's entering the information in one easily accessible database. And there's another side of that argument where people were like, the government shouldn't even know I own a gun, that's like an invasion of privacy. And you will try to regulate my life and regulate me by what I own. And will I become a target, and will it lead to, a totalitarian form of government where the government knows everything about you? There are people that strongly feel on the other side of the coin that no, you shouldn't even be in my business when it comes to gun ownership. So there's a lot of different facets to this conversation.
It's a lot of different facets, and based on some of the numbers around gun ownership and just guns in country. If you figure the latest census showed that, and CBS News put this out, there are 335,893,238 Americans in this country, 335 million Americans. There's 494 million guns in this country.
Wow, it's increased. Wow.
494 million guns, y'all. We got more guns out there, what owned and all of that in circulation, more than people in this country, right? And I see folks in the chat talking about, gun rights and all. This is not about gun rights. This is about us, and I know we got to take a quick pause, but this is about stepping out of the adult mind, getting into a teenager's mind, right? Now we got this. Let's put that back up about the latest statistics that there's actually less violence in America. The FBI put out a report just recently, maybe like a couple of weeks ago, Suzette, that says that there was less violence in America in 2023 than in the previous year. This is when the statistics, 12.9% decrease in homicides in 2023. But if you're talking to the next generation, young people, Black folks, Black youth and Latino youth who are living in these high violent areas, that's not what they're seeing. And so when we have these gun conversations, I think we should start looking from the mouths of babes more so from the eyes of adults, because we might be saying, well, I could own a gun, I have a right. Sure, that's all granted by the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of those things, boom, boom, boom. But I'm talking about the violence in Black and Latino neighborhoods in this city, in cities all across this country, in Los Angeles, in Miami, New York. I'm talking about that. And what does that do for the next generation and how they perceive life? When you talk about gun rights, that's one thing. We got to take a break. When I share with y'all the next story of two 10-year-olds, then tell me about gun rights. Because we're seeing that, again, as I mentioned before, gun violence is one of the number one killers of young people in this country. Gun violence, not some disease.
Regardless of race.
Regardless of race.
Yeah.
So are we kind of step out of our own comfort zone a little bit, Suzette, and say, okay, let's see what the next generation is facing, because this is a different conversation for them. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversations about this. And of course, I want to get your take. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network, joined by my sister Suzette Speaks, as we talk about gun violence, gun reform, and basically a new report that shows that Black and Latino teenagers are saying, yes, guns make communities unsafe, but they still want one to feel safe. It is a vicious cycle. Now, I want to share with you the story of two 10-year-olds. And I know, Suzette, you and I talked offline about this story, but this has happened just this past Saturday before the ball dropped to bring in the new year. I want y'all to really think about this as we have this conversation. And again, I'm emphasizing that y'all step out of your own comfort zone as an adult and see the world through the eyes of 10-year-olds and teenagers who are living life where violence runs rampant. But this happened on Saturday, and it's about the community of Foothill Farms, which is a community about 16 miles northeast of Sacramento and here in California. And it is about one 10-year-old boy. His name was Keith KJ Frierson. He was a football player, and he was out with his friends when he was did a little bike race with another 10-year-old. Well, essentially, KJ beat this other 10-year-old in a bike race. And according to the reports, according to the witnesses, the other children on the scene, he was the other kid was not excited, was not happy. He was upset. And the neighbor's children told KJ's mother that they saw this 10-year-old walk off angrily after he lost the race, and he returned with a gun. Now, how did he get the gun? He got the gun because during the course, once he walked off, his father had asked him to grab some cigarettes from his car. And while he was there, he grabbed the gun, which was stolen and improperly stored, according to the sheriff's office. According to the sheriff's department, they said the child took a gun from inside the vehicle and bragged that his father had a gun and proceeded to shoot the victim once and then run into a nearby apartment. This 10-year-old ended up shooting little KJ right in the neck, killing him on Saturday afternoon. The father, Arquette Davis, 53 years old, he was booked on suspicion of possession of a firearm by a felon, criminal storage of a firearm, carrying a stolen loaded firearm in a vehicle, child endangerment, and acting as an accessory to a crime after the fact. The authorities booked this 10-year-old, but then his name was withheld because he's a juvenile, but they booked him on the suspicion of murder. Suzette, help me understand here.
Yeah, such a tragic case. And as we're talking about gun reform, again, I don't think, the average American is thinking that a lawfully owned gun is something that, again, should be in any way, prevented under our Constitution. However, there should be, many believe, some limitation because we have an issue. And some are going to argue, and I know I just try to present all sides of the argument, y'all, that when it comes to illegal guns, that's the real problem. So there are folks that are going to say, leave me alone. I'm a lawful gun owner. I follow the rules. I'm registered. I take my classes. I keep, up with the laws. But the real issue are those folks who are, like in this case, able to obtain a gun illegally. Now, as you laid out this case in Sacramento County 2 days before New Year's Eve, according to some reports and a firsthand eyewitness of his aunt. The child had just gone outside, not even 15 minutes. KJ had gone outside with his new bike. And as you said, what transpired was just horrific. So you have two 10-year-olds. And again, when we talked about the previous study, thinking again, outside of our probably neighborhoods, or if you don't live in a highly urban area of the country or where people are faced with this type of violence on a regular basis, it's sometimes good to kind of think about what it must be like in their shoes. So think about a 10-year-old who was able to access an illegal firearm within minutes of going into, like you said, a childhood rite of passage, a bike race, and not knowing, and I think the prosecution here, of course, both have been arrested. To me, the more liable party is that father who kept an illegal gun improperly stored, not in his car, sent the child to go get cigarettes, and the child had access immediately to this illegal weapon. comes back and shoots a kid, the other 10-year-old KJ Keith Frierson in the neck. And I think even we talk about premeditated. I was thinking about how would the prosecutor prove that a 10-year-old intended and knew what he was doing, fully understood the implications of what it means to have this weapon and to pull that trigger. I think it's going to be very difficult to prove. But nonetheless, outside of how this will be prosecuted, I think the real issue here is that we have a problem also that has been unaddressed with illegal guns and how we in the United States prepare legislation to deal with those illegal guns. Because on the books, this gentleman, Mr. Arquette Davis, should not have had it, right? So the law was there. Again, we've seen this with red flag laws. The laws are on the books. But what happens when people who are not supposed to have them try to get them anyway? And again, that gun was reported stolen back in 2017. So who knows how many hands have seen that.
Come on. Great point. Excellent point.
With 2 10-year-olds whose lives are ruined because of access to an illegal weapon. So I think we're going to talk about legal gun ownership, yes, on one hand, but we also have to talk about what kind of legislation would actually have an impact for the illegal gun problem that we also have in the United States.
Can we throw in the mix though, Suzette? Because I know we talked about the mental health side, but are we really having conversations about not gun ownership, but just this idea that the only way to resolve a conflict is through violence? And how that is when you really look at it, when we're talking, even looking at this report about Black and Latino youth, it's that mentality that the only way that I can resolve a conflict is through violence. This is the only way to do it. Not talking out, not even taking a pause to take a break. If you got a 10-year-old, y'all, I mean, I want this thing to resonate for all of us, right? This is a 10-year-old. How many times have we as children done things like, oh man, laughed at somebody? Now you got to think about if your son or your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your grandson or granddaughter gets into an argument with their schoolmate, a neighborhood buddy or something like that, that the mind will automatically switch to, I need to kill it. At 10 years old, right? And how that's problematic. This ain't about legislation for me. This is about the thinking. This is about a culture. This is about where we stand in our own heads when it comes to conflict. Like some of us, they say that this generation doesn't have the thick skin. Because I've been bullied, I've been talked about, and all of those things. But it never crossed my mind to say that, you know what, when I go to school tomorrow, I'm gonna bring a knife or I'm gonna bring a gun. It just didn't cross my mind. There was still a sense of boundaries on how I would respond to those type of situations. Same thing, I think now there are no boundaries. And I think that's the scariest part about it, though, Suzette. You know what I'm saying? Like this type of random act of violence, like who do you get mad at? Yes, you can get mad at the dad, but then it's like, you want to get mad at the 10-year-old, but then you're like, damn, he's 10.
Yeah, no, but there'll be the legal framework around charging juveniles, and I hate that word, charging youth and young people, especially in California. I was trying to look up how much time could he really get, all those type of things because of his age. And I was, and again, I don't practice in California. I was just trying to do a quick preliminary search about, it could be, he could see release at age 25. This is all prognosticating in terms of what a child at that age, normally faces when he commits this level of a crime. And again, he shouldn't have had access to the gun in the first place for this to happen. But I think to your point, I know we have to take a quick break. Thinking about the cultural norm is another animal in of itself. Whether that's, again, through our music, movies, video games. People don't want to blame the game. People don't want to blame, but if you sit around with the headset on and you're shooting people 3, 4, 5 hours a day on a video game, it makes it, some would argue, and even psychologists and folks would talk about how that changes a child's brain and the impact of them being able to see another human being as just that, human, and the life as sacred. So I know we got to take a quick break, but it's
We
just
got
a
to take a
really
quick,
sad
you're right.
situation around.
Absolutely. Super Nintendo, you said there's nothing you can do about illegal guns. We need to address the mindset that leads to gun violence, and we need to hold record companies accountable for the content that they put out. Facts. Facts. Kevin McNeese, he said he sent his kid to get cigarettes. Why he didn't get up off his ass and get it himself? I don't know. Pastor Damon Blissett, you said this wasn't even a conflict for Farajii. No, this was a simple schoolyard situation, bike ride, and then that went just too terribly wrong. But to have that mindset, like this kid was so upset, and I don't know where this kid's mental health, his state of mental health was prior to this moment. Did he have fights and all of those things? We don't know. But he got so upset that he went into the car. He probably wasn't even thinking about it. But he went to the car and he's like, I don't like being laughed at. And therefore, boom, he see this gun and he's going to shoot it. And it probably, and I'm sorry, at 10 years old, it probably didn't even think about it. Like, oh, I'm going to shoot. He shoots a kid in the neck. First and foremost, do you know how close you got to be able to do that as a 10-year-old child shooting another 10-year-old? You have to be like right up on him because you're not a marksman.
And there were other children present as young as 6.
And there were other children present.
But the fact that can a 10-year-old really understand the long-term implication of what that does?
No.
Not only to his life, but to the other child's life. That's really sad that it's going to have to play out in court of law.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for the second half of the show. We've been having some dynamic conversations. And as I've been talking and checking in with my sister, Suzette Speaks, host of the Suzette Speaks Show and licensed attorney out of the state of Florida, talking about everything from President Biden's campaign strategy to this latest conversation that we're having about gun violence and the story of two black teenagers, 10-year-olds, excuse me, out of Sacramento, California, one 10-year-old killing another 10-year-old right there on Saturday, this past Saturday, over the weekend, before the new year started. One 10-year-old shoots another 10-year-old in the neck in front of children and parents and everyone else and drops and flees the scene. And this ongoing conversation about gun violence, gun safety, gun reform. This particular story is used as part of the conversation that we're seeing that Black, according to a new report, that Black and Latino teens are saying that, yes, their communities are safe, but they still want a gun to protect themselves. It's a lot. It's a lot. And Suzette, as we were just taking that pause, just looking at some of the feedback from the crew on the YouTube chat, and folks, you can join us right now as well as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page and Roland Martin's Facebook page. There's a lot of different views about this, especially I think in Black America. I don't think there is a one size fit all solution to how do we address this problem, right? Some of us come from the school of thought, well, let's put in that community work. Let's push for peace. There's a group that I used to work with in Baltimore called Safe Street, and they would do, direct action organizing. They would go into neighborhoods after a shooting would happen. They would perform some type of spiritual cleansing, exercises and things, and more importantly, connect and build relationships with folks, right? Doing this for Safe Streets, doing this for the 365, the Ceasefire 365 movement that's happening in Baltimore and other cities around this country. But then you still got another school of thought that's saying, look, don't take my guns. It is protected by the founding documents of this country. I have a right to own guns. But when you hear certain stories, it's just, and then you see the numbers that we shared with folks earlier today. That's from the alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, the ATF, those numbers. How many guns are actually out in the streets right now, owned by legal owners that are illegal? 494 million guns in this country right now. With 335 million people in this country, we got more guns than people. And then we look at the culture of violence, the ongoing culture of violence that's proliferated through music, through politics, through education. This culture of competition, violence continues to be the pervasive culture of America. There's a lot to unfold here. I know we can't get through it all, but it's just a lot to unpack and take in when we have this conversation.
Yeah, there are so many pieces to this puzzle. And again, our thoughts are with this family in Sacramento County who had to deal with this. Two 10-year-olds, basically, whose lives are destroyed. And thinking about it from that, individual case to, larger, what can I call it, impacts that this issue has. Again, we know that survey in particular were Black and brown inner city youth, folks who are living this reality, who are experiencing this directly. And then you also have to kind of keep in mind that we've also seen this trend impact the suburbs. Like, I know it can be very divisive. We want to talk about, the inner city youth versus, everyone else, but the suburbs of the deadliest mass shooting this year was in Maine, right? That shooting about 3 months ago. And we've seen it all over the country. So although this particular survey and study, targeted young people who, again, see this on a daily basis. Like, again, we don't necessarily all have that experience where every day there is a report of a shooting. Every day somebody got shot. Someone is impacted. Someone unfortunately loses their lives, and it doesn't always make the news, in every part of the country. We only see these kind of very sensational headlines when there's a mass shooting and when there's somebody who has killed multiple people, and this kind of very sick cycle that we're almost immune to and we've gotten very used to. But it's a all over America country. I just want to re-emphasize that, and that we oftentimes see it painted with a black or a brown face.
Yep.
But ask those people in middle America, and they also have stories and have Uvalde. We could just name the names. That it can be small town, it can be inner city, it can be wherever. And I think that's why there has been this recurring call to see if there can be bipartisan federal common sense gun reform where both sides of the aisle can compromise and do something that hopefully protects more of American children.
What do we say? Well, let me do this. I'm gonna get this quick comment from Janelle, one of our great culture crew members. But I want to get your take as well, Suzette, about this conversation. Some people say it's not about legislation. It's not even about the number of guns. It's about parents and parents doing what they're supposed to do. Like what we saw in the case of these 2 10-year-olds, the father of the shooter who had the gun in his car and that left the gun open, essentially left the gun open to be used by the 10-year-old to shoot the little brother KJ. So, I want to get your take on that in a moment. But Janelle said there are more channels, because people often have been saying this too, that there's media is part of the problem. And Janelle responded to C. Cole and said, there are more channels and ways for people to listen to music than ever before. No one is being subjected to mind-numbing violent music. People are choosing their music. And I'm want to kind of add to what Janelle said. And I think that's a great point, Janelle. Thank you for posting that. But I want to add that this is a choice in some degree, right? Like we're in 2024 now. So when we're talking about human behavior, when we're talking about human decision making, this is becoming more of a choice. This is not like you don't have to be a killer. You don't have to subject yourself. And I'm with Janelle on this. You don't have to subject yourself to music or to any type of media that promotes killing. Like these are some choices, and I don't want to lose sight. Like you said, don't lose sight of the fact that it's not just about Black inner city youth. Let's not lose sight of the fact that these are choices that people are making, right? These are choices that people are making. Yes, there's a mental health component, but these are choices. And we all have been faced, especially in Black America. If you grew up Black in this country, we could have, and especially Black men, Black boys, we could have chosen a lot of different paths. There's no way in the world that you can tell me that Black men are only subjected to street life and that we ain't got no choices except for football and that. Come on, I don't want to hear that bullshit. That's bull. That is bull. Like if you listen to the stories of Black men in this country, Black men, we have decided and we have chosen life in so many times. Time after time after time, we've chosen to get out, to not be a part of the street life. We've chosen not to be a statistic. We have chosen life. I'm not convinced on this argument that it's all of these other things as if we don't have control and as if we don't have choice. But what's your take on that, along with the parents' arguments?
You sound like I've had this conversation with my brother many times.
Okay.
And we stand on two different sides of this. Because I think it tends to oversimplify or overgeneralize what environmental factors are and how they impact individuals. Now, when we talk about choices and we talk about adults, that's one thing. If we're looking at a case like this, where there's a 10-year-old whose environment is a dad who obtained an illegally stolen firearm, that's his environment. That's his. That's
what I'm saying.
So I'm like, when we keep saying choice, I'm like, the internet, thank God, is a great equalizer because information is there. But the algorithms of what's promoted to people, and when we get into the next story about the Claudine Gay firing, we see a lot of foolishness multiple times on our internet and on our feeds. And I was talking to my friends. I was like, have you guys seen it? I've seen it a couple times. And my friend homeboy was like, nah, I've only seen it once. So I don't know if social conditioning can be discounted to the point of saying you got a free will, go. When there's environmental contributors through music. Again, if a kid is living with someone who sends their kid to go get the cigarettes and they know that their car got, firearms in it and whatnot, is he choosing?
No. Age matters. No, I'm not saying that. I think
environmental contributors matter, and then there's a concept. Like my brother is very big on the internet. Make everybody have every access to anything. Don't tell me about nothing. You can Google it. You can find a YouTube show on it. You can find an online class to do it. He's very big on that. But I just don't know if it was that easy. There would be no poverty. There would be no other. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I agree with you. I just want to say
contribute to it.
No, and I agree with you. And I don't mean to be disrespectful by cutting you off. But I'm just making a point. Like the choice in that case, and I'm saying this might have to be a case by case situation. R. Cat Dave is 53 years old. That's his choice.
Right.
And as the scriptures say, the sins of the fathers visit upon the children, right? So that's a choice. And I'm not saying the 10-year-old, and that's what I'm saying, that's the hard part about this, because you're like, damn, he's 10. He's 10. So, his
brain doesn't even,
his mental capacity is not even fully developed, right? To understand the complexity and consequences. But I'm saying in that case, it's the father's choice that he raised his son in an environment that he left the gun in the car, that he has a stolen gun in the beginning. So where is his head at 53 years old?
Yeah. Like I said, I agree with you on the case by case. I think this is a deeper kind of, again, my brother would be like, I don't want to hear nothing from nobody.
I think this
too much complexity. Big on we as Black people have access to so much more information and other means of understanding how to, for example, make money or do other things. And I'm like, that's the society has other, I guess, barriers to entry. Information is the first part, right? Information is the first part, conditioning one's mind. Outside of, again, what's being fed to children, watching online, little girls, word for word, repeating Sexy Red. It's heartbreaking. But did they have a choice to be conditioned like that? Of course, it's their parents' choice to allow them to be singing foolishness at their ages. But I'm just saying, like, the amalgamation of what becomes a human being and therefore what they choose. I think the impacts of what happens along the way. I think even in law, we have a kind of a discourse around this, what judges take into consideration when it comes to sentencings and whatnot. We look at the totality of one's life. We say, oh, look, he was a great person and he's never done anything like this before, Your Honor. This was a fluke. This was a, crime of passion or whatever. Please forgive, right? But any human being put in a certain environment, though, can be a whole different human being from a safe and a optimistic and a positive environment. Do you understand?
No, you're right. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It's so cut and dry that we probably need more time to unpack this.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that once you get to a certain age, and I'm speaking about those of us who are at a certain age, right? Like if once you get to 18, I'm talking about, even though your mental capabilities aren't fully developed even at 18, but you do have an intrinsic meter of between right and wrong, right? Like you do know that certain things are right, certain things are wrong. And I'm saying that once you get to a certain age, I'm not talking about these little children. And unfortunately, in the 10-year-old case, like, yes, he's responsible for the killing, but I'm glad that they went after the father
100%.
Because he's the one that has created the culture and the mindset in the child and his own 10-year-old son that violence is the only way to handle any type of conflict or any type of situation where when you walk out feeling disrespected. That was the father's choice. And as a result of that, I can only imagine as a dad, here you got your 10-year-old son, he shoots and kills somebody, and at 53 years old, your legacy is that you are breeding a person who kills another individual.
And think about what he did. This is why he's charged with being an accessory. He ran, got the gun, and tried to throw it in the trash. Try to get rid of the evidence after the fact. This is again, if you are cultivated by that type of kind of environment, that person, it's so sad. I'm like, you want to do better. I don't know. We're getting kind of into a humanism versus like, there's a lot here.
True.
So I know we got to take a break. But
yeah, let's take a break. Let's take a break. But all is to say that we still got a lot of groundwork to do. We still got a lot of mindsets to change. But this is not just about the gun itself. There's a whole lot of other stuff surrounding the gun that needs to be addressed. So when we have gun reform, we can't just try to, like you said, oversimplify and say, oh, we're responsible and people who have mental health challenges. Gun reform talks about, let's look at the culture of violence that continues to be pervasive in our country to the point where 10-year-olds are shooting and killing other 10-year-olds. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about Claudine Gay, former president of Harvard. We talked about the fire, her resignation yesterday. But the question has become, does Black America even care about what happened to this sister at Harvard University? I'm going to share with you the excerpts of what one writer had to say about the situation, get Suzette's take on it, and of course, hear you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks, host of the Suzette Speaks Show, and he's a great licensed attorney out of the state of Florida. As we talk, shift gears a little bit, talking about what happened yesterday that kicked off. It really didn't start happening yesterday, but we saw another major development in the story of former Harvard president Christine Gay. And monkey and said again.
Sorry, Claudine.
Oh, Claudine, excuse me.
Yes.
Claudine Gay. Thank you so much, Suzette. And we saw Monkey Confessions even makes it and say first Haitian.
Haitien, sac passe. All right, Miami, let me know. Let them know, Miami.
First Haitian black woman who serves as the president, who served as the president of the 388-year-old institution. Now, there is still a lot of conversation about this. We talked about this on the show yesterday because of the big news story, but now I think that the news is out there. I think there's a lot more analysis as to what happened. How did it get from her coming in 6 months ago to her leaving, having the shortest tenure as president in Harvard's 388-year history? And it's crazy. The unfortunate part is by her being the first Haitian black woman there.
Haitian American.
And then have Haitian American woman, and then she has the shortest tenure in the history. It's sad, but there is some folks who are saying, Suzette, that this whole scenario it doesn't concern Black Americans. Let me share with folks what Dustin Siebert from The Root wrote about this, and let's put up quote one for us, please, Lise. Thank you so much. When Mr. Siebert made this point, he said, there's little doubt that Harvard, one of the country's oldest institutions of naked white supremacy, would tolerate a Black woman at the helm, but for so long. Her ouster should be enough for the pitchforks to come out from Black Twitter, but instead we're talking about swag surfing in church and Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special. Perhaps Gay's battle didn't register amongst the Black proletariat because she was president of what perhaps the most well-known Ivy League university, and one that is generally associated with inaccessibility among Black folks in the country, with a widening college enrollment racial gap. Many of us hear of anything associated with Harvard and think, what's that got to do with me? Do you agree with this assessment?
Boy, Justin Siebert, fellow journalist at the, he made some great points. At The Root, I was going to say, he made some great points. I had some differences of opinions with his article, and I appreciate, his viewpoints. And when he opens this article, he starts with talking about how when Black folks really feel strongly about something, you hear it loud and clear through social media, from Twitter to, I would call it, I don't know, do we say Black Instagram and Black Facebook? I don't know what you say, but through the social media zeitgeist, we start to see the groundswell, right? And of course, this just happened, right? So this happened yesterday. So in his article, he's making commentary about why he doesn't feel it made waves on social media. So I was kind of like, did it not make waves on social media? And how it seems as if, it's not being given adequate enough or similar attention to other huge and impactful instances in our history. Now, one of the ones that he calls out first and foremost was, of course, what we saw was the groundswell of Black activism when it came to what happened in 2020 during the George Floyd uprising. And what we saw there was the everyday Black person from, top to bottom, got money, don't have money, in between, working class, as he calls it, proletariat, or upper class or upper middle class, whatever you want to call yourselves. Everybody was on the same page and came out in full force on social media. He's saying, and what I gathered that he was saying from the article was that, well, we didn't see this. And again, this just happened. About 24 hours now, we're reporting on it still. And he's saying, do Black people even care about this? And in his title of the article, he said, because she's not one of us. So I took a little issue with some of that because I felt like, first and foremost, there was a comparison being made, apples to oranges, for me. Now, somebody being savagely murdered on camera, the way George Floyd was snuffed out of this earthly life, had such a deep-seated impact to what Black people know can happen, does happen, and is inherently wrong. and done by police officers. I think that has just a visceral and a very different impact than somebody who is losing her job. So I think there, when he opens and gives me that, it was a little apples to oranges for me, because it's right. It's a job. It's the most important job. Now, as you pointed out, Harvard is a 388-year-old institution, oldest in our country, most prestigious in our country, even some would argue around the world. And again, this is the first time a Black person has been at the helm. Second time a woman has been. So when we look at former President Gay and what her tenure was like, I was trying to get an idea, like, who is she? Because I was trying to not make a too much of a qualitative versus quantitative assessment. What does that mean? I don't know her as a person. I can only say that she took a very big misstep after, a 20-year history there, having taught and had different roles when it came to political sciences and other things. I think that misstep at the hearing was something that I think Black folks might have looked at and all kind of thought, wait a minute, sis, you might not be in the right direction, as the three presidents of very prestigious schools sat during this congressional hearings just over a month ago and were asked about what is allowed and not allowed on campus when it comes to anti-Semitic rhetoric and what goes against their codes of conduct. Now, the Congress woman Elise Stefanik did a masterful job. I'm not going to be mad at her for kind of setting up the tone of the conversation, and they fell for it. I won't call it a bait, but I will say they were much more professorial with their responses when it comes to what needed to be said in that moment versus how the country had changed after the attacks on Israel on October 7th. So I think there was a huge misstep and a miscalculation by all the ladies who were serving as presidents. And this is the second of the three that have now lost their job. Now, the first lady, I think was UPenn, was fired. And now Claudine Gay has been, I can't say it. It's not saying has been asked to resign, but sorry, that's not factual. Has resigned. We don't know.
And then, you know what? I'm glad that you made that distinction. I'm going to read
between the lines and say there's a possibility, but I can't say that because it's not factual.
Yeah, because
of what's out there.
And then that's the other part about it, Suzette, because she announced that she's resigning, and then Mr. Siebert, the writer of this particular article, were referencing saying that she was ousted. And then, I'm seeing some other headlines that say she was fired. So I'm like,
no, she technically resigned now, but Black folks
resigned, but with one of them situations.
And I'm going to say with the quiet part out loud, because we know where there's smoke, there's fire. And as soon as, I guess I can only say from my little circle, when we started talking about it and after the hearings happened and everybody was coming out against them, especially on conservative media, there were lots of like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. And in the liberal circles too, they were saying you can't say that anti-Semitic, Nazi-like rhetoric is not banned from your college. And they were trying to make a nuance, and I'm not going to get into the argument they were trying to make, but this nuance, again, very professorial, cerebral argument about First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. But again, this is a different world now. And many people thought they did a horrific job, including the Harvard Corporation, which is the body that runs Harvard. But they stood by her in writing. And when they came out immediately and said they stood by her. But we know, especially if you've worked in corporate for any modicum of time as a Black person, when they start saying, oh, we support you and all these letters of support, you better be careful, because that's not always, that's the public stance. But there's a lot more politics, as she wrote in her resignation letter, goes on behind closed doors. She received phone calls. She received emails. I can't imagine the hostility, both from within and without the institution that she has been facing over the past month. Some people on social media, again, Black folks will say, I think we might be very split. And again, y'all tired of me saying we're not a monolith, but we're not. There are Black folks, again, that pay attention to, business and politics and news. And really, we were watching this, and it has had an impact. And it did come across my timeline several times on Instagram or on X, like who I follow talked about it. Again, I talked to a friend, a guy of mine, and he was like, I only saw it one time. I understand Justin's and the author's a point that it wasn't shared and reshared kind of in the same intensity as some other things that kind of go viral. But I just don't know that to say that it is not important to us, but I think there was more of a collective, like, we're not shocked by this. We possibly even expected this.
Yeah.
From many corners of the Black community. And I think, again, it doesn't matter to everyone because as he was pointing out in the article, you know, if the average Jane or Joe doesn't see themselves as having a lot in common with someone who goes to Harvard, the Harvard president, they're not going to have this, again, for firing, the same kind of stand by our girl reaction. I think the other thing I want to bring up is that through her process of being vetted to become president, this so-called plagiarism, and I think this is I looked from what Mr. Siebert was saying, it has not kind of taken hold of the Black community, but is number one trending on Twitter. The word plagiarism is among the top 5 today, yesterday searches. Harvard is in that top 5 on Twitter, along with Kimmel, Dark Shadows, and Rufo. I don't know what those are, but nonetheless, people care. It's number one trending. People are paying attention. But I think what his point was that no one is necessarily coming to her defense. Although, again, I'm seeing Mr. Attorney Benjamin Crump post about it. Of course, I see Joyanne Reed of MSNBC, what she can't say, and I think we have a couple of those and we can bring them up after the break, like quotes from other people that may have a sentiment, perhaps that they feel, I can't say that they feel that way, but they've been posting by other thought leaders in our community what cannot be said, I think, by certain people that have, positions at certain networks. But nonetheless, I think there is a segment of the population that really does see this as a part of something that impacts Black people as a whole because of the representation piece of being the first, the only at Harvard, that it has an impact for us collectively. But then I do think there's a group, subset within the Black community that's like, why am I paying attention to that? That's rich people problems, etc. So he has some valid points within this article, but I know we have to come to a break.
Yeah, we got to come to a break, but I think that the points that you brought up were absolutely important. And I think Corinna made this point in the chat, and I agree with Corinna. To get to become the president of Harvard, you have to go through a number of steps, and there are a number of people looking at everything that you've done because Miss Gay was a part of the Harvard community. She was already there. She was already a part of the system there. So you mean to tell me nobody saw this plagiarism situation until now?
Sir, we want to talk about it after the break because this is not.
What I'm saying? That's what and see, that's the test right there. Y'all want to act like, oh, we just found out. She went through all of these phases, and I'm sure she went through interviews. I'm sure they looked at the record. None of this shit was brought up. And then all of a sudden, she gets in a little hot water with folks in Capitol Hill. And the next thing you know, well, we found that there was some plagiarism. So there was no accountability placed on those who did the hiring or those who made the determination that she was best fit for the role. What did they do? Did they get fired?
Harvard had no issue with her academic record after they investigated. So let's pick this up on.
All right, let's take a quick pause. Let's stay with us, folks. The conversation continues on the other side with Suzette and with you. Stay with me. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together, so let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We are continuing our conversation about the firing, the resignation of former Harvard President Claudine Gay after just a number of tumultuous moments in her presidency over the past month has led her to announce yesterday that she's resigning. And so today we continue the conversation and asking, does Black America even care that she has resigned? And some people would say fire or ouster. Is this even a big moment for Black America? Well, according to Mr. Dustin Siebert, who wrote a piece for TheRoot.com, he makes the point saying that this is not even on the radar for Black America, and maybe it should be. And possibly the reason it's not on the radar is because it's Harvard University, and the fact that Black folks don't feel connected, don't feel like they have access to the prestigious institution of 388 years. And so we are at this point where a Black woman is criticized, maligned, and blasted from Washington to Boston and all across this country. And we are kind of mum about it, according to Mr. Siebert. We're continuing the conversation with my sister, Suzette Speaks, and of course with you as we talk about this. But it's a lot of accountability to pass around. I think a lot of blame can be placed. You know, she decided to resign, according to her own statement, Suzette, after she met with the Harvard Corporation. She came out of that meeting deciding to resign. The question I have is
pressure.
Pressure, right? So right. So my question is, Suzette, is they probably, maybe, and I'm just speculating here, but look, we can save you, but
Lord, this would be better for the community.
But we're going to cut back on your powers. We're going to start to monitor your activity and your behavior and what you say. They may have told us something like that. And she just like, you know what? I can't do it. I can't be controlled. I can't be, micromanaged to this point. And that's probably why she decided we don't, maybe she will come out at some point and say something. Maybe she won't. I doubt it. I doubt we ever get that part of the story.
We might. If I
We
were her, I
might.
don't know what kind of clauses she has in her contract, but I think there are so many different levels when it comes to who
Different
she's
levels.
responsible to, because I think that was the misstep that many of the congressional testimony or the ladies who testified in front of Congress made. So university presidents we've talked about on this show have one of the most difficult jobs, because you not only answer to the student body, right? The students who are there, the faculty are there, the alumni, and I think what they miscalculated as the community as a whole, right, as having the impact that it can have. What we saw, because of the nature of how prestigious Harvard is, it belongs to like the country in a sense, not only to the alumni base, which is very strong. And if there are people within that alumni base that decide that you have to go, ma'am, these are the most successful people in the country, right? The ability to send your kids there, through their, patronage system, allegedly, and what, people can pay to make sure their kids are okay. And then they have the legacy system as well there. This is the elite of the elite of our country that goes here, and they value this circle very much. So when it comes to who you answer to and how you're answering to questions on Capitol Hill with regards to this sensitive a topic, she's not the first, as Mr. Sieber pointed out, to see her demise career wise because of this giant misstep, and she didn't do any favors for herself through that congressional hearing. Now let's fast forward to what we were just talking about now. The other allegation that has now become a part of the story and why we see it trending is this idea of plagiarism. And when I was trying to, do some research and see what exactly was it that was miscited or not adequately cited during her dissertation, et cetera, et cetera. But what you saw, and I would like to use a couple quotes that we've seen several folks who are thought leaders in our community kind of bring up, is that the pressure came from outside, not within the faculty ranks, not so much so. And again, there was division within the student ranks, depending on who you ask. But there was a conservative push from outside, starting with this congresswoman who asked those questions, Elise Stefanik, to make sure to paint this woman and how she perceived the issue of free speech into a corner that wouldn't leave her no wiggle room to come back from. So I would like to use some quotes from other commentators, and let's start with one that I think Mr. Ben Crump posted on his Instagram.
Okay.
From Natasha S. Alford. She is an author and she's also a journalist, and you can find her on Insta or on X. And she said, what happened to Claudine Gay is a playbook that they will follow, her words again and again. They will do whatever it takes to undermine, humiliate, and unseat Black people in positions of power they don't want there. She continues. Not only did conservative trolls publicly target Claudine Gay, she privately endured ugly racist phone calls and emails. Harvard acknowledged in their own statement about her resignation. I can't imagine what the past month has been like for her. And that's a little snippet of what she said in her resignation speech. Claudine Gay talked about having those attacks. Natasha concludes by saying, and this is not just about removing this Black woman, Harvard president. They want to send a warning shot to any Black people who dares to come next, to be afraid, to think twice. So I think there is this side of where some Black commentators and Black thinkers are saying that the significance that she has, or the role that she had, and what now has happened to her is far more reaching in terms of the mindset and even the vision that other Blacks who are climbing the ranks of academia, what they may now be more trepidatious or confident in pursuing some of these higher positions when it comes to Ivy League and other similarly situated institutions. Is this bigger than her? Absolutely. A lot of folks are saying that this was targeted because of the level of the institution, the idea that there are so many people within this kind of conservative MAGA anti-woke wing of conservatism that want to show, or by all means set out to push what was already kind of a shaky ground for her, push her out so that it can make a point about diversity, equity, inclusion, when it can make a point about Black leaders being so-called not vetted as harshly. But I like to bring up this quote that was on Attorney Ben Crump's page by Ibram Kendi, author. He points out, this is journalism, an attempt to report what truly happened and why the plagiarism allegations came not from her academic peers, but her political foes, led by conservatives who sought to oust Gay and put her career under intense scrutiny in hopes in finding a fatal flaw. He continued, when a racist mob attacks a Black person, it almost always finds a seemingly legit reason for the attack that allows the racist mob to accrue popular support and credibility, and which allows the growing mob to deny that they are attacking the person in this way because the person is Black. This is his thoughts. That's how anti-Black racist attacks have long been justified. They are seemingly legit in reasoning. In this latest case of the Harvard president, it's primarily academic misconduct, or plagiarism. So that's where he feels that there's so-called legitimate reasoning being attached, but that is not a legitimate reason. He continues. The question to assess whether this was a racist attack is not whether President Gay engaged in any misconduct. The question is whether all these people would have investigated, surveilled, harassed, written about, and attacked her in the same way if the Harvard president in this case would have been white. In his opinion, he says, I think not. He concludes.
Hey, Suzette, let's take a quick. Oh, you got one more. I want to take a quick pause, just 30 seconds.
Sure. All right. It says, you want me to finish this last one?
Let's finish this last one, please.
Okay, finishing and saying, it isn't hard to figure out why racist mob is cheering right now and saying, go woke and go broke. And Dr. Gay wasn't qualified, and that the tide is turning against woke and DEI. And this is the beginning of the end of woke. So he's making quite a different contention, but I know we have to take a break.
We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's finish up this conversation and try to get to some conclusion. Stay with us, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues. Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere. It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be Black-owned media.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network, talking to my sister Suzette Speaks as we talk about the latest and the ongoing, I guess, the fallout from the resignation of former Harvard President Claudine Gay. And you were making a point, bringing up various quotes of folks that are in these academic spaces who are looking at this situation and analyzing it. Ibram Kendi, one of the most prolific thought leaders right now in the country, especially on race issues.
Out of Boston University, just so we know.
Boston, right, out of Boston. So he's pointed out that, look, this is, again, the race situation that we see facing in this country. And I'm so happy that you brought this up, because I think that this moment of what happened to Sister Claudine Gay should force us to have some different conversations about social and economic mobility and education, like being leaders in this education space. And this is why I'm saying it, because Big Brother Willie Frazier said something that I think is important. which is, this whole idea that we are pushing our people. He said, so at this point, this is Willie Frazier. He said, so at this point, wanting these prestigious positions in the social structure shouldn't be our goal, but building our own so that we can be insulated from the gaze of white supremacy and racism.
Well, I've seen commentary that says she should go to HBCU next. I mean, I don't know.
I've seen that. We talked a little bit about that yesterday as well. And so will this help to kind of compel Black academics and just Black folks in any position? Because I think you can look at Harvard, of course, but I think you can look at this in the corporate world as well, right? When you have Black CEOs and Black leaders of major corporations. Does this compel us to have different conversations about what are we calling for at this point? Do we want to continue to be the mannequin of white agendas when it comes to certain institutions? Or are we trying to really change the culture, do some different things and push the envelope? Like, I think
it's about access, Farajii. I think to say, again, y'all stay over there in y'all playground and we'll build our own. Can be an imbalanced approach for Black folks, because we just talked about how the Supreme Court, there are literally 3 or 4 schools that all Supreme Court justices come from, and we need more Black people in the Supreme Court. We can talk about the influence in several different industries and how from these elite schools, there is a kind of pipeline that is perpetuated by those who've gone to them. So I am not of the thought of the school of thought to say stay away. And since now they have now spent a narrative of this person, listen what we come away with. This unqualified person who was Black shouldn't have been there in the first place, therefore don't. I think we need to do the opposite. I think we need to keep pushing into these corridors and towards these tables, because they gonna eat whether we're in the room or not. And for those Black students who are on campus and the alumni and the future alumni to come, we need advocates who also have access. So for me, it's not a turn your back and go along, because those halls of power are just that. They are very powerful. And I think we need folks who know themselves and who are really advocates for issues that affect Black student life and Black life at large. We need them in these institutions. So I'm very much opposed to the, we don't need y'all, let's go build our own. I think we can do both.
You think we can do both? Well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Now, whether, as you pointed out in one of the quotes, they're talking about, I think Mr. Kennedy said, if this is a warning shot to Black folks and to Black academics, of how white institutions are going to, essentially treat us, then I just don't feel like there's any other choice. We don't have too much choice here in the matter, right? Where do you take your talents and your skills? And I know this might be a controversial, and I know this is at the end of the show, Suzette.
You gonna leave me hanging? Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say no. I'm going to say this. Nobody expected Hamas to attack Israel on October 7th. Nobody was talking about that, right? So if that moment did not happen, would she still be at Harvard?
I think that's, again, so deep. I think they miscalculated how that moment did change the public discourse.
You see what I'm saying?
Hear what you're saying. You're saying, again, her First Amendment contention. And again, we talk about, even on my show, and I got a new show coming up tomorrow, 1 p.m., y'all. But anyway, when we talk about, hate speech versus free speech and how you can burn an American flag. And again, these are things that are very theoretical and very philosophical and very, again, academic in nature. They forgot about the other audience, right? They were not in a classroom. They were not just standing in front of their Harvard board. They were not just standing in front of their student body and their faculty. This was in front of a country now who is looking towards what's going on in the Middle East with a whole new set of eyes, and what was going on.
But here's the thing, though.
I see what the point is that you're making. Who knows? But I hear what you're saying, because we live in a different the outcome has been impacted by that conflict.
And very quickly, this country, we are so reactionary in terms of when a situation goes down, we have a first response. and then we don't think about it, right? So everybody, like, even with the George Floyd killing, you know what I'm saying? Everybody jumps the bandwagon, up. You know, you got companies and everybody's pledging to change and racial justice and everything. But I'm talking about if, you know, we don't think things through in this country. I'm saying as a collective, I'm not talking about just black folks. I'm saying our culture is we respond first and then nobody thinks about the follow-up. We're not thinking things through enough to say, you know what, we may need to slow down this train. Because now everybody's talking about, oh, this thing about anti-Semitism and everything. And you have the Jewish community in this country that's feeling like they're being victimized. And then you have, you know, other folks who are like, no, this is a problem. But no one, if that was a moment of uncertainty, hell, the president didn't even know how to handle the situation. And so we want to, it's so quick, like we're in this country, we want to blame people so quick. And Stefanik, the representative who was grilling Claudine Gay, she just acted as if like, wait a minute, hold on, lady. Once you slow down a little bit and try to think through this moment, because it's not a situation where you can just, let me get rid of this person and then it's all is well. It's not that type of situation. This is a conflict that's been happening for decades. And now it's like, oh, people losing jobs, people can't speak out. It just feels like this is just a Band-Aid approach to a gashing wound instead of somebody saying, let's slow this thing down. Let's have some different conversations about where we are in this country. People, why are people so upset? Why is there a rising tide against Jewish people in light of this tragedy? No, we're not having those type of conflicts. We just want to jump in and, oh, you need to get fired. You talking about Jewish people, you got to get fired. You got to get canceled. And it's like, wait a minute, slow this thing down a little bit. Let's figure this thing out. If this is really about human rights, if this is really about, you know, peace in the Middle East and peace in this country, slow it down. Let's have some different conversations. And unfortunately, Claudine Gay was a casualty of that, right? She's a casualty of this rushed moment to try to bring some sort of resolution or try to make one community feel better at the expense of other communities. And it's like, I don't think that's the best way to handle this situation. It's unfortunate. She may not get a job back or any other place. I don't know, but it's just, I'm looking at the underlying things that surround this whole moment. So it's very, very interesting how this thing is going to play out. Suzette,
I can't even respond. We're out of time. I appreciate y'all. Thank you, guys.
I appreciate you, Suzette. All right, so you got a new show that's coming out.
Yeah, we relaunching. Hey, relaunching for the new year. You can catch me Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, Saturdays around 12 noon. Not this Saturday, but the following one. We're back with new shows, so I'm really excited. You know, kind of breathing new life into the Suzette Speak show. So will you please come over and subscribe, right? I appreciate everybody who's already come over to subscribe, but really appreciate y'all support. Always a joy to be here and trying to understand these issues a little bit better alongside each and every one of you. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Shout out to my people.
Thank you.
And always a pleasure. Thank you, Farajii, for what you do.
Hey, thank you, Suzette. Make sure y'all follow her on all social media platforms. The great Suzette Speaks. Always here joining us on Wednesdays here on The Culture. And also make sure y'all support her on her own show. Brand new season coming out. So we got to support. Thank you, Suzette, for being so good for the culture.
Yeah.
All right, peace. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you. We got some new watchers that checked in on the chat, on the YouTube chat, on the X chat, as well as on our Facebook chat. So welcome to The Culture. And we truly appreciate it. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app, follow us on social media, and continue to financially support us as we do this great work of carving a space to have these important conversations about Black America in the digital media. So again, join us on blackstarnetwork.com. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin, Eastern Time. But as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow with another set of great conversations and more discussion about the culture right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.